Hi everyone and welcome to the NetCore Conference 2021. This session is #Power Teams, the ultimate guide to approval tasks in Teams using adaptive cards. Before I start, I just want to say a thank you to all of our sponsors. You can see them on the screen there. And just a little bit of information about your speaker for today. So my name is Kat Greenan, and I am a Microsoft Solutions Specialist at a Microsoft Gold partner based in the UK. I specialise in Microsoft Teams, and I have a blog called collabwithkat.com, which shares tips and tricks when using Microsoft Teams, so please feel free to check that out. I'm also on Twitter. You can see my Twitter handle there, @GreeningCat. And on the right-hand side, you will see my LinkedIn QR code. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. I share updates about Microsoft Teams and Power Apps and adaptive cards. So please feel free to follow and check that out. So before we dive into creating adaptive cards, I just wanted to explain what they are for those who maybe aren't aware. So adaptive cards are a new cross-product specification for cards within Microsoft products for things like bots, Cortana, Outlook, and Windows. They essentially share information or gather information from your teams in a formal, structured way. And you can see some examples on my screen now. Adaptive Cards uses Power Automate to automatically share cards into either Teams chat, channels, SharePoint, Outlook, and more. Now, the first one that you can see on my screen on the left-hand side is a really simple adaptive card. And that adaptive card is a way that is sharing a piece of news and a couple of buttons so that the user can interact with that card. They can click on that button to view, and it will open up that news article based on wherever it is. So what we're doing in the first adaptive card is posting news, and really all that's doing is surfacing information to the user and giving them the option to go somewhere else for the information. In the middle there, you can see that we have a task adaptive card. So adaptive cards can be used to distribute tasks, to inform users when tasks have been updated. And this is connecting to Microsoft Planner, or Tasks now that was called Planner. So what we can do is we can allow the user to again interact with the card. So we can allow them to complete the task from here. They can add notes. We could even add buttons in here to view the task in the planner plan. So it's a task management type of adaptive card. The one on the right-hand side you can see is input form. So this is a way to gather information directly from a user from the card. So you can create input forms to gather feedback or process new employee information, poll, ask questions. You can really decide what information you want to pull from the user, and you can decide what to do with that information. So we can, plug that information from the user into a SharePoint list, an Excel spreadsheet, or even have a team notified when someone has posted a response. Now you can embed adaptive cards in Cortana, Outlook as well, not just Microsoft Teams. So some of the use cases for adaptive cards and why you might want to use them. So the first one is pushing news or information to the team. So what this will really do is share information to your teams and your employees and allow them to interact with the cards and keep up to date. So a really good example of this is there was an organization we were working with, and they had their company intranet on SharePoint online, and they would post news articles on SharePoint, but they realized that a lot of users don't actually check the intranet for news. So what they did was they created an adaptive card to be posted to all of the teams in their environment every time a news article was posted in SharePoint. So when a news article was posted, that was sent out to the users via an adaptive card. They could view it, they could click on it, and they could interact and look at what that news article is. And they found that that kept their employees up to date. It sent the information to where the employees are actually doing their work, and they actually improved their read rate of the news articles as well. Another example or use case is document approvals. So if you have a very long-winded approval process, so you have to email 5 different people, wait for the response, you want to sign off a file or a branding document, takes a very long time to get that approved. What we can actually do is move those approval processes into teams using adaptive cards to totally automate that process. So a user can create an approval process. It will automatically be shared and sent to the approver via Teams, and they can quite easily approve or decline, put a comment, and that's sent back to the user and shows them the status. So we can move approvals with adaptive cards as well. Case management is a good one. So adaptive cards integrates with Dynamics 365. And so if you use Dynamics 365, you can create an adaptive card every time a new case is created or a new opportunity is created or an account or a lead. It's completely up to you, depending on which version of Dynamics 365 you're using. And you can send that information into a specific team or channel. So we can use adaptive cards to create that integration between Dynamics 365 and Teams. And finally, collecting input from users. So the input form, you can see another example of it on the right-hand side, where we're basically asking, our users to register for an event, and we can allow them to choose which type of food they prefer. There's drop-down options in there. And really what we can do with this type of form is gather feedback, get opinions, put in employee information if they're onboarding to the organization. The kind of possibilities are endless, but we can essentially gather that input from our employees through adaptive cards in Microsoft Teams. As well as use cases, there are some great benefits. So that's some examples of how to kind of use the adaptive cards within your organization. But the benefits of using it, the first one is reusability. So when you create an adaptive card once, you can reuse it across different platforms. And I mentioned that could be across Teams, Cortana, Outlook, and so on. And you get a really great look and feel with adaptive cards. So sharing information to Teams through Power Automate can become just very basic with some text, that's shared to the team. But if we use adaptive cards, we can share images, links, interactive buttons, and we can achieve all of this without coding and having to create any custom code ourselves. Speaking of code, this is a low-code solution. So you do not have to be a developer to create adaptive cards. Although there is some code used, most of it is pre-built in templates. So you actually don't have to worry about spending money on upskilling employees to build adaptive cards. I myself am far from a developer, but I use adaptive cards quite frequently with my organization. And finally, how do we actually build an adaptive card? So when you're building adaptive cards, you're sharing these based on either a manual or automatic trigger using Power Automate. So we need some kind of workflow in Power Automate to actually send the cards to the place that we want them to send. So when you create a workflow in Power Automate, you'll see actions like post an adaptive card to a channel or chat. Now, when we choose that action, we require what's called JSON, which is essentially your adaptive card code, to be inputted into the action in order for the adaptive card to work. I will show you a demo of that in just a second, but I wanted to show you the 3 ways that you can get the code to add that to Power Automate. As I mentioned, it's low code. I don't have to create any of it. It's there in templates. Now, the first one is documentation from Microsoft. There are lots of templates of code that Microsoft will provide that you can simply copy and paste to build your adaptive card. These resources are all free and definitely worth looking at. And let me just show you a really quick example here. So right now in my browser, I have a website that I'll post for you so you have it available. But in here, you'll be able to see that I have some sample templates of cards that I can use in Power Automate. So you can see from here, if I scroll down, I've actually chosen on the left-hand side the food order template, and it's given me an example of what the adaptive card looks like and also the code. So here's the JSON that I mentioned that you need to copy and paste into your Power Automate. I'll show you where to paste that in a second, to allow the adaptive card to work. So I don't need to really kind of create this on my own. It's here provided for me. I just have to copy it and paste it. What I could do from the left is I could actually have a view of different types of adaptive cards. You can see a flight itinerary there on the right hand side. This is what it will look like when you paste this JSON into Power Automate. You can see that we have agendas, expense reports even, where we can allow employees to submit their expenses and create an approval process to approve or reject with the information provided. There's a huge amount of different use cases for the adaptive cards. You can see some more examples here. Calendar reminders, product videos, images. If we chose image gallery, you'll see here. So there's quite a few different things that we can do with adaptive cards. And every time I click on one of these, you'll see that the JSON changes. And so that is where, this is where I'll kind of copy and paste that information. And this is all free for you to use online. So I would definitely recommend checking that out. The second way is to use the online designer, which is my favorite way to create adaptive cards. So the online designer is free to use, and it really gives you the option to customize your card, and it will update the code as you customize it, allowing you to easily copy and paste that into Power Automate. So let me show you an example of the designer. And again, it's a free website. So it's adaptivecards.io/designer. And you can see in here, first of all, I have an example of what my adaptive card looks like. And what I have on the left-hand side is a list of card elements. So in here, I could choose to add an image. And all I would do is drag and drop that where I want it to go in the card. And then I could link the image, the URL, to create the image. That's not the actual image. There we go. And I could add the URL to link to actually share that image in here. I have different elements. I can add a text block for my users to input some text. So I could say, input this text here, or add this. We can add some text in here. I could add an action. So again, these are like buttons. So I could say submit, open URL, show card. So if I choose that, you'll see I have the option to submit this information now as a user. I could click this button. And if I actually want to change this, so you can see here, I've got action.submit. I don't like that title. So what I'm actually going to do is select it. And on the right-hand side, I've got the element properties. So in here, I could decide to change that title. So it just says submit. So you can customize that. And I'll come on to the URLs and where that will link to in just a second. The input, so I can input a date, so I can ask my users to input a date or a time or text or a number, for instance, if I want them to, put in their information. And again, if I select the input element here, you can see that I have placeholder text on the right-hand side that I can customize. So I could say, add your details here. And that's the kind of placeholder text when a user goes in. They can see they need to add their details. And so, that's where they'd fill in that information and they would submit that form. I can kind of drag and drop. I can delete elements as well in here quite easily. And every time I customize this form, you'll see that the bottom is changing. The code is changing. So it's given me the code instantly as I kind of customize it here. I'm just going to cancel that one for now. And I'm going to drag and drag this up so I can actually see the code. So this is the code that you would copy and paste. So I would just copy all of this, the whole thing, and I would paste it into Power Automate to create that adaptive card. So the adaptive card designer is my favorite way because the templates are pre-built. So in here, this is the pre-built template. I can just copy this template code and paste that, and it will show this exact card. Or you could actually transfer this into the designer by clicking try it yourself. And in here, it's taken me to the designer. So now I can customize it. I can change it and the code will change as I'm doing it as well. So there's a couple of different ways to create adaptive cards. The third option is to use Visual Studio with adaptive cards. So you can author cards directly in Visual Studio Code, and the extension automatically detects all adaptive cards in your working space. And you can really easily edit the card template and sample data as well. So you have 3 key ways to build adaptive cards. The first 2 options are free. Obviously, for the third option, you do require a Visual Studio subscription. Okay, let's take a look at a live demonstration in that case and just see some of the examples that I've mentioned. First of all, we're going to look at news. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate now to Office 365. I'll zoom in for you. And what I've done is I've created a adaptive card workflow for a piece of news to be posted into a team. Now, what I've done is I've actually done this as a manual trigger. And I'll show you the Power Automate workflow that I created in a second. But here, what I can do is I'm actually going to go to the site contents because I want to choose one of these news articles to send into Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to go to site contents and I am going to choose my site pages because I want to choose a news article. And here's a list of my news articles that I can start the workflow from. Now, just to make you aware is that this is a manual trigger. So I've done this for the purpose of a demonstration. It's easier for me to control when the adaptive cards are sent, so I can actually show you what it looks like. But if you wanted to automate it, you could. So I could decide, to send the news article as soon as it's created or published. I could choose to send a news article every month. If I wanted to into the team, I can kind of make that a process where I don't have to manually trigger it. But in this case, we're going to manually trigger it. So I'm going to click this news article. I'm going to click on the Automate option, and in Power Automate, you'll see here I've got post a message to Teams for a selected file. So I'm going to do that now. We'll give it a second to load. And then what this will do is it will take the information from this page, so this news article, it'll take the title, it'll take a bit of a description, anything that I've decided in the adaptive card, and it will post that directly into my specific team that I've chosen. There we go. It's just taking a minute. I have also added, a message. So I've said you need to send a message when you post this news article. Check out this news and run the workflow. So now, if hopefully it won't take too long, but if I go to my team, you'll see the team that I chose was the project team in the design channel. And you will see here that just now the news article that I've triggered has been sent as an adaptive card into my team. So now my users can actually go in and they could choose to click on the view button, and that will take them to the news article within their intranet, within SharePoint. But they'll be able to see it come through in their Microsoft team. And I could add an image in here if I wanted to, more links and customize it. But that's an example of the news adaptive card in here. So let me show you the workflow behind that. I'm going to go to Power Automate, and in here you'll see the one, I've got a list of my flows. The one that I used was the post a message to Microsoft Teams for the selected file. So let's go ahead and edit this and actually just see, how it was built. So what I did was I chose for a selected file. I actually started this workflow from SharePoint. So what I did was I went into the page here. I chose an article and I chose automate from here. So I decided to create a workflow from here. So it's automatically taking this information. It's taking the site, the library name. I've got a message in here that I need to send. So for a selected file in this library, get the file properties. We need to get the information from that file and from that site. And this is the action that I chose, post adaptive card in a chat or channel. So what I did was I just added in here, new step, and I added an action, and I just chose the post adaptive card in chat or channel. I've decided to post the adaptive card as Flowbot, but I could have it posted as a user. So I could say, instead of it coming from via Power Automate, I could just have it coming from a marketing person or a communications person. I've chosen to actually post this in a channel, but I could decide to choose to post this in a group chat or just a one-on-one chat, but I chose a channel in this case. And if you choose channel, you then need to select your team. that's related to it and which specific channel within that you want to post the adaptive card. And in here, you will see, this is important, this is the adaptive card JSON. So what I've done is I have, in the designer, I've created this card and I've chosen the news card. And what I've done is I've copy and pasted this into here. But what you will see is that I have some dynamic content in it. So what I have to do in order for my adaptive card to pick up my SharePoint news article and my SharePoint link, I need to add the information so it can pick it up. So for example, in here, we have the text. Now in the text, it's asking me to choose a title. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the title from the SharePoint site. So the dynamic content it's taking is from the file properties. And in this case, I want you to take the title. So every time a user or every time we send an adaptive card, it will take the exact title from that item within SharePoint. I then scroll down and I need to also create a URL for the profile picture of the person who actually sent the adaptive card. I need to then, if I scroll down, I can add in dynamic content for who it was created by, when it was created. I have a dynamic content for the description. So do I need to add a description in there? If so, I need to choose that from my dynamic content. So I've chosen this option here. So it's going to pick up the description for my news article. And finally, what I've done is I've added an action here to actually open a link and view the news article. And so what I need to do in here is add the dynamic content to item URL. So take the link from that news article and put it in this button. So when the user goes in and they click here, it will take them to that news article. So that's how we've done it. And you'll notice that it's a bit confusing when you first look at it, because how do you know where to put your dynamic content in? A little tip I will show you when you are creating your adaptive cards in the designer. If you rename the text and, if I call this, for example, add description dynamic content and do that, and then I copy and paste this adaptive card JSON into Power Automate, if I scroll down, you'll see I've got a big thing in there that says add description dynamic, content. So I could do that for all of the different elements, and I could just add placeholders to say, this is the button, choose the link here, title, make sure you add, this is the title, and do some stars so you can really notice it when you're using the dynamic content. So if I scroll up title, I can see that quite clearly. Makes it easier for me to know where to add my dynamic content in. So I would recommend doing that if you're customizing it, so you know exactly where to add your dynamic content. So when I paste it, I'll see a big star with description, and I'll know that's where I need to click and put my description in. So, and then and that's it, that's all I've done. I'm going to hit save on that. And that's my adaptive card for posting news into a team. Another one that I wanted to share with you is the task management. So in tasks, I could quite easily create, the ability to manage tasks from Planner within Microsoft Teams through adaptive cards. What I've actually done is I've created a workflow called Post Adaptive Card when the task status changes to complete. Let me show you it first, actually. Let's go into Planner and show you the adaptive card working for the user. So what I've done here is I've created a workflow to say every time a task is completed in this particular plan or the status of the task changes, I want you to update and let the team know through an adaptive card. So now I've updated that information. I've clicked around and changed some of the, some of the components. I've completed some tasks. If I go back to my team, if we give it a quick second, we will hopefully, I'll give it another couple of minutes. Essentially, this is what it looks like. Update from Planner. There's a task status that has changed. So the status was it's been completed. It was completed by Megan. And I can click in here to actually click to view the task. And when I click on that, it's going to ask me to sign in again, but it's going to take me to that planner where the tasks are so I can view it. Oh, it's asking me for a refresh. It'll probably pop up now. Of course, it's going to ask me to sign in again. So let's just do that quickly. I'm just going to sign in. And we're using the web app. So let's see if it's going to work for me. So what I could do from here is add in, I've chosen my adaptive card to have the button to view the task. I've added in the title of the task and the plan at the time when it was, created. And then I could go in and I can view it as a user. So, but you could create an adaptive card to say, as soon as a task is assigned to a team, I could post an adaptive card where users could click to complete it instead of just view, and so on. And I'll give this a refresh to see. It takes a minute or so to come through. All right, we'll wait for that then to come through. But let me show you the workflow behind that. So all I did in this case was I created a workflow to say when a task is completed in this specific team for this specific plan. So this plan is related to this team. So for that one, if there's any tasks that are completed in here, the get user profile is getting the information so we can use dynamic content. And in here again, I've chosen post your adaptive card into a channel, and you'll see I've pasted in my JSON there. And in here we've got our dynamic content, just like the other ones, but this workflow, actually, it pre-populates this for you. So if you create this workflow in Power Automate, it's actually going to create the dynamic content and add that in for you so you don't have to. So it's a little bit easier to create, but it works in exactly the same way. One tip actually I would just suggest is I ran into a couple of issues using the latest version of adaptive cards. You can see the adaptive card version in here is version 1.2. I think if you're on 2.2, there's some bugs with it that are being fixed, I believe. So if you're having any issues with adaptive cards, just change the version down here to 1.2 instead of 2.2, and then that should work for you. So just be aware of that. But that's posting and managing tasks. The third option I wanted to share with you is the input form. So the input form within Microsoft Teams, I've actually created it as a manual trigger. So what I've said is what I've got here is, here we go, this is the one I want to use. This workflow I've created is manually triggered, and that's because I want to start the workflow myself. Because of a demo, I want to choose when that form is posted to my team. So let me just test this now and actually trigger this and start the workflow. So I'm going to run the flow from Power Automate, and what you'll see is that in process, it's manually triggered, so that's done. But the adaptive card option I've chosen is post adaptive card and wait for response. That's because we're using a form. And so what I need to do is I need to allow the user to complete the form, wait for the response. And as soon as it's got the response, it will go green and it will tick. But right now it's in progress. The workflow is not completed because the user hasn't filled out the form. So let's go back to Teams. And what I've done is I've actually asked, finally, there's the task update that I mentioned. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the design channel. This is where I've decided to add in my adaptive cards for the form. And you'll see that here I now have a form. So I've got an image on here. It's, tell us about yourself. This could be just adding in any kind of information, a new employee started, or, it could be lead generation. Please add a new lead, contact details in here, and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in my name. I'm going to ask, so this is the information it's asking me for. Also, you'll see that I've got placeholder text, youremailexample.com. For last name, first name. So your placeholder text is there and I can see it, but I can type over it. So I'm going to add my details in here and I'm going to hit submit. And now as a user, that's submitted that information and I've got a little message. Thank you for your response. So now if I go back to my Power Automate, you'll see the tick is now green because the user's completed the form. If I expand that, you'll actually see the response. You'll see the response time. You'll see who actually responded. So you get the detail here, but I actually have the data from that form. So I've got the email and the name that I requested. So any of the form data will be in here. What I can do is I can decide, to add that data and put it into a SharePoint site, a SharePoint list, an Excel spreadsheet. So instead of the data going here, I could decide to pull that data and send it somewhere else. But for this example, I've just kept it in here just for demo purposes. It's easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and let's go into have a look at the actual workflow. So I've manually triggered the flow, but you could create any kind of trigger. For this, it could be an automatic trigger. If somebody starts the organization or someone new's added to a team or whatever it is that you can think of. And then I could choose to post the adaptive card, wait for the response. And in this case, I've chosen the flow bot and the a channel. And in here, you'll see I've got my adaptive card JSON at the bottom here. I actually used the template option. So in here, what I actually did was use the sample template. So I just copy and pasted this JSON and I posted it and pasted it into here. You'll notice that I don't actually need any dynamic content because I'm not pulling information from a place and sending it to the user. I'm trying to gather the information from the user. So I didn't have to actually add any dynamic content in here because I used the template and I didn't customize it. I've got my JSON in here. And I've actually got an update message that I can change. So instead of thanks for your response, you could link that to somewhere else. You could customize it, just type in your own text in there. And then, of course, I've got the team and the channel where I can choose to, choose the place where my adaptive card will be sent. And then I can hit save. And that's my adaptive card and my workflow created. So in terms of using, the three examples that I talked about, the tasks, the news information and the form, there's tools already there created for you to make this a little bit easier. So you do not need to get a developer in to try and build this stuff. Unless you want to get really, really complicated with it, it's pretty useful. There is one more thing I wanted to share with you, and that is approvals and approval processes. So approvals within Microsoft Teams, there is an app called Approvals in Microsoft Teams. So what I'm going to do is on the left-hand side, I've got the three dots and you'll see I've actually already got the Approvals app, that I have been using. And so if I can't see approvals there, all you need to do is type in approvals and it will pop up. Now this Approvals app is something that it's no additional cost to your licensing, but it gives you the ability to create approvals within Teams. What I can see from here in approvals is all of the approvals that are happened in my environment. So I can see someone's asked me to sign off on something was cancelled, things have been requested, things have been approved, and I have a history of all of the approvals in here. And what I could choose to do is create a new approval request from here. And I could say, okay, this request is basic. The request is please approve this item. I could add a message and I could add my the person that I want to approve. In this case, I'm just going to choose me. I could choose to require a response from all recipients. I could add details in here. So the branding doc for the project or whatever it may be, add attachments. So I could attach the file in here. I could add a link if I wanted to a SharePoint site. So for example, if I chose this, if I go into SharePoint, I could decide to, copy a link to a file and get that link. And I could paste that. Let me go back to approvals and I could attach that link and I could paste it. Branding doc. Do I want to allow them to do custom responses? Do I want to send it to another environment? Where do I want to do it? I want to send it to another, organization. And then in there, what I could decide to do It looks like, is there something missing? There we go. Is send that. And now what will happen is if the approver, in this case it's me, so I am actually going to see the request come through, but I will see that approval come through, and it will come through in my activity, it will come through in the approvals app, and I can go in and I could choose to approve it. So you can see I've got a little banner request pop up, I've got it in my activity feed, and in here I've got a little card which shows me, please approve this item, here's the document to approve, and I can say, okay, all good. I could approve or reject it, and I'm going to approve that in there. And as soon as I approve it, the person who's requested the approval, so me again, gets the final status notification. So as soon as that item is approved by that person just clicking a button, I can see that come through. I have the ability to, to see that and see the notes and so on. So I could do that from Teams, but I could also decide to do that from SharePoint as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the file, and it's this branding elements that we need signed off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the 3 dots and choose Power Automate, and I'm going to request sign off. I think it's this one. So I'm going to request someone to approve this document. I actually think this is not the one that I need to use. I think that's just doing the approval in email, which is fine. There we go. Request sign off. So now I'm going to, oh, it doesn't seem to like me very much today. I'm going to request sign off. So I'm going to add, you can't see it there, but it's asking for the person that you want to approve. I can add a note, please approve, and I can run that workflow. And now what's going to happen is that's going to go through. You can see here, it's just come through as a banner request in my activity, and I can see the link to the file already added in here. So I could do the approvals and start that from SharePoint. I could start it from Teams itself. And again, I can approve and reject it. And if I choose to approve or reject it, what I could do, I've rejected it in this space, but this is, you can see it's pending the sign off status. So I could actually have that information added into SharePoint with the file as metadata. So I could say, if it's approved, then tell me it's approved in the sign off status. So when I can go through all of my files, I can see which ones have been approved and which ones haven't. So I can send that information. It's taken a while to come through, but I can send that information back to SharePoint to let the user know what's going on. A couple of other approvals that I wanted to just make you aware of is doing approvals through the channel as well. So we can do it through the approvals app, from SharePoint, from Teams. And I could even go in and as a user, I could start a new message and I could say, can we do this? Here is something to approve. Can I use this message? And I could do like a message underneath, text of message for like marketing document or anything like that. Add in the information here. And I could actually just create an approval from my message within Microsoft Teams channels. So I could say again, okay, I'm going to have a new request. I'm going to add a name or a website, add in the approver names, messages, I could do custom responses, and I can hit send. And that approval will then be created for my organization. So you can see I can post that. Please approve the text for the website. I can choose to approve or reject it or view the details. And again, if I've linked anything in there, if I've added any content, I can see it and I could choose to approve it. And that's done directly within. You can see now it's updated the card to say that this item has now been approved, and I can go in and I can still view the details. So we can create approvals from channel messages in the app, from SharePoint, wherever it is that we would need to start those approvals. And if I just click on the activity, you'll see all of the requests that have come through, approved or rejected, and all of that information. You can find everything in your approvals app within Microsoft Teams. Now, of course, this is just doing the approvals from Teams and SharePoint, and not creating any kind of Power Automate workflows or anything like that, because it all kind of does it itself. And we can even integrate Adobe Sign. If you have an Adobe Sign or Adobe subscription, you can add Adobe Sign as an approval process in there as well, which is quite handy. But if you did want to, go into Power Automate, you could see a list of, if I just go to action items, you could see a list of approvals in here as well. So I could see, please approve this message that was created. If I open that up again, I can see the card, I can see the details in here, I can see which site it's related to. So I can see all of my approvals I've created in here, received, sent, and the whole history of it as well. What I would recommend is looking at some of the templates in Power Automate if Power Automate is relatively new to you, because you'll see here that it's actually creating a whole bunch of workflows for me without me having to create my workflow from scratch. If I go to approvals, you'll see that I can choose to start an approval process and send an email once a form's been completed. I could send an approval in Teams when a file is added in SharePoint. So it's still using, if I just click on it now, it's still using the approvals app. It's using Teams, we're using SharePoint, but we're just getting a little bit more fancy with it. We're creating approvals that are connecting to lots of different sources in Office 365. I could choose the SharePoint site, the item, or the location, and the user. In this case, me. I'm a very lonely person in this organization. It's only me that's using it. And in here, if I look at the workflow, if I click on edit, I can see in here that when a file is created, obviously get the information because I need to add dynamic content, create that approval process. So in here, I've got the approval type, the title, and the details. So I've added in, it's automatically created this for me. If I was to do this from scratch, I would have to add in this dynamic content and this information. And it's easier to use a template if there's one there. And when you create an approval within Power Automate, you'll see that you have options. So there's, the options to post the adaptive card in a chat or channel, wait for the approval, and then I could add in conditions in here. So I could say, if the outcome is equal to approve, then do this. If it's equal to this, do this. And I can add in different actions for the conditions as well. So I can change what happens when someone approves or declines something. Okay, so I hope that has given you as a whistle-stop tour of adaptive cards in Power Automate and Microsoft Teams, but hopefully it's given you an idea of some of the art of the possibility when it comes to using adaptive cards. Not many organizations that I work with are aware of their capability. So I would definitely say have a look at the sample templates to see how you could automate your processes and improve, things happening in your organization and make it a little bit easier for your users as well. So that is everything I wanted to cover today. I want to say another big thank you to our sponsors. If you do want more information, then please contact the NetCore conference email or the website you can see on my screen now. And if there are any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to answer those for you. But thank you very much for attending, and I hope you have a good rest of your conference.